Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the BookTrib live chat with the incredible New York Times bestselling author Carla Neggers. I am your host this afternoon. Some of you know me as BookTrib Babe on Twitter. Go follow me there for the latest news and updates regarding our fabulous book lovers community, BookTrib. Speaking of BookTrib, do you like free stuff? Who doesn't, right? Sign up for BookTrib. It's free, it's easy, and you can enter to win loads of free books on our BookTrib bookmark. See what we did there? Okay, now back to our guest of honor. Carla Neggers has been spinning stories ever since she climbed a tree with pad and paper at age 11. Now she has millions of copies of her books in print in more than 30 countries, and more than 2 dozen of her books have been placed on the New York Times, USA Today, and Publishers Weekly bestsellers list. Declan's Cross, which is the book she is here to talk about with us today, is the third in her acclaimed Sharpe and Donovan romantic suspense series. A lot of you have had the pleasure of reading Declan's Cross as part of our month-long blog tour, which is still going on right now. If you head on down to booktrib.com, you could follow along with the tour for giveaways, reviews, interviews, and more. When Carla isn't writing, she loves to travel. She recently just returned from England and Ireland, which is where Declan's Cross takes place, in Ireland. Uh, in fact, Carla's novels are noted for their atmospheric element. And according to the National Sunday Telegraph, this is a direct quote, Neggers does a first-rate job of creating scenes with images that are so vivid, which I'm sure if you read any of her novels, you could certainly agree with that. To get even more vivid images, if you head on down to BookTrib's YouTube channel, we created a beautiful slideshow of fantastic pictures of Ireland that Carla took herself. It's truly fabulous. In addition to traveling, Carla loves to cook. If you go to her website, carlaneggers.com, you will find some of her favorite recipes. She told me there's more to come, so stay tuned with those. Now to this fabulous book. How pretty is this, by the way? It's gorgeous. So, in Declan's Cross, an escape to an idyllic Irish seaside village is about to turn deadly. Dun, dun, dun. I'll have Carla tell you a little bit more about that. But make sure you stay tuned to the very end of the chat where Carla will be announcing the 5 lucky winners of this fantastic book. So, without any further ado, I am going to invite our guest of honor on camera so she can tell you more about herself and the book. Hi, Carla.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Oh no, I can't hear you.
Okay, hang on one second.
Can we hear you now?
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me
Okay,
now okay?
maybe I just can't hear you. Oh, here.
Hang on one.
Oh, I got you. I can
I
hear
have,
you now. There you go.
okay, all right, we're all
Okay,
set
great.
then.
So I'm going to have
Great,
you take it
awesome.
away, and we're excited. So here you go.
All right, well, hello everyone. Thank you for being here, and I would absolutely love to answer any of your questions. So we can get started. I'm a little new to this. It's all the stuff on my screen, so maybe some of you are um, new too. So, okay, so tell us your most rewarding experience since being published. You know, I was published so young. I've had so many wonderful and rewarding experiences, but the most rewarding for me, to be honest with you, is just really meeting readers, talking to readers, hearing from readers who have loved one of my books. It's gotten them through a bad time. It's been entertaining during a good time, during ball games, during dentist appointments, you know, waiting for the doctor, whatever. So that for me is so rewarding because, you know, when I started writing as a kid up in my tree, you know, you can see I'm in my Vermont hilltop office, so you know, me and my trees. I just really I was writing stories that I loved to write and think about and just enjoyed doing. But for me, it's connecting with other people. That the story is, you know, it's something out of my imagination. But when it resonates with somebody else, that to me is just incredibly rewarding. You know, and I've also had some great good fortune. And I do remember getting the call when I first made the what we call the printed New York Times list. And it was a very cold Boston day, and I had had no heat in my hotel room, so I was like Bob Cratchit up there typing. And I went to a signing in downtown Boston, and while I was getting started, my daughter had just come in, and the bookstore, um, the bookseller who arranged the signing brought me the phone, and I'm like, okay, what's this in it? And I wasn't even thinking about it, and I found out that this book had made the Times list. So that was very, very exciting for me, and a moment I'll never forget. It was really a lot of fun. Is there a song you could list as the theme song for your book or any of your characters? Oh, what a great question. Sometimes I love to write with my iPod playing, and I don't like it coming out of the computer, the iTunes coming out. I don't know, that's weird when I'm typing and the music's coming out, but I'll have these music on in the background. And so when I'm writing certain books or certain scenes, it's like certain kinds of music works well and sort of identifies the characters. Not necessarily I've got to have like total silence, which isn't that hard where I live. But for Declan's Cross, I listened a lot to several songs by the Young Dubliners, and I listened to um, Saw Doctors, an Irish group. So both are Irish groups. So that somehow or another resonated with me in the story as I was writing. But there were times when I'd pop on Dropkick Murphys too, just to okay, I'm awake, I can type. So, but I don't think of a character like, okay, I create. We have FBI agent Colin Donovan, and he's a deep cover agent who's main character of the Sharpe and Donovan series. He's the Donovan, and so we followed him from Saints Gate to Heron's Cove, now into Declan's Cross. And I don't think of a particular song that's associated with him, like this is his theme song. I don't really think that way. Same with Emma or any of my characters, but I will often have certain songs, certain groups that I play a lot. Like my kids are going to do an intervention with Dropkick Murphys. I think I was up to 569 times I listened to some, it was just on in the background over and over. So I will do that when I type, and but like I say, other times it's just silence. So I hope that answers your question. Do you have a daily writing routine? I sort of do and I sort of don't. And what I mean by that is it depends on where I am in the book. When I just finishing up a book called Cider Brook. It's the third book in my Swift River Valley series, and it comes out in February. So we're in that phase of here come the galleys and the proofreading and all of that. And I find that I just have to sit down and do it. No music on when I'm doing that. And I just immerse myself and I get it done. And it helps me to keep track of things that like little mistakes. Like if a character stands up and then sits down, and then now you've got them sitting down and you've already done that. So it's these little repetitions and things. And I can keep track of that better if I just immerse myself. But then there's times when I'm, really, really working and writing the book, and I'll have more of a regular schedule. I'm very much a morning person, but I can write anytime, anywhere. But I definitely like to write in the morning. So I will come down to my office with my coffee and sit here and see what I can do. Um, but sometimes I'll go with the flow too. I'll just everything's cooking, and I'll just come back. I'll work odd hours as well. But so I guess I'm very disciplined, but I'm not necessarily regimented, if that makes sense. Hope that answers your question. What's the next one? Let's see. Oh, somebody says, love that you listed the listen to Dropkick Murphys. Yeah, they're great for um, just getting the blood boiling here, you know, and waking you up. I actually went to one of their concerts a few years ago. That was fun. It was in Boston too. So Boston is my city, by the way, with Declan's Cross. You know, most of the story takes place in Ireland, um, but there's a Boston and Maine connection to Emma Sharpe and Colin Donovan. They're based in Boston, and so that's kind of my city. Let's say, Rhonda says, "Love your covers. Do you get to pick covers?" I have a lot of influence um, in my cup with my covers, which I'm very, very grateful for. There was a time in my career where I had no say, no influence at all. It was just arrives, you know. So and I think a lot of authors now do have some say, and publishers want our input. But I also like to trust the art department too. You know, they came up with the cover for Declan's Cross, which I really think is beautiful. And I, of course, you know, I had sent some pictures um, that I took when we were in Ireland. Um, you know, this story, Declan's Cross, I knew from the end of Heron's Cove, a little bit of a spoiler here if you haven't read Heron's Cove, which is the second book in the series. We have Emma and Colin. Um, we leave them off in Ireland, and they're kind of getting to know each other better. So when Declan's and you don't have to read Heron's Cove to read Declan's Cross, by the way, you'll figure this out pretty quick. So I knew when I was coming up with Declan's Cross they that my main characters were in Ireland. Well, now what? Well, you know, of course, it's a suspense novel, and we've got the romance, their ongoing relationship. So something was going to happen, right? I knew something would happen. Um, so Joe and I, my husband and I, were in Ireland on the south coast in the Ardmore area, St. Declan country, wandering around there. And I just said, "Oh my gosh, we've got cliffs, we've got ancient ruins, we've got the contemporary feel of the art world in Ireland, of great restaurants, or great hotels. All this stuff kind of came together, and Declan's Cross is the result. So when we started talking about the cover, the elements of the cliffs, the water, the Celtic cross, St. Declan, and implying all of that. And then we have the theme. If you look at the Saints Gate, Heron's Cove, and now Declan's Cross, we see Emma basically on the cover in each instance. So the fourth book we're actually is called Harbour Island, and we come back to Boston, and we're starting to talk about the cover for the fourth book, and whether just what to change. So if anybody has any ideas, like with Emma in each one, do we keep that? Do we maybe go in a little closer? Do we change it? Do we bring in Colin? What are we going to do? And so I provide ideas, and I ask a lot of questions, and I say, okay, here's the setting, here's the atmosphere of the story, here's what's going on in the story, and then the art department comes up with concepts, and we go from there. So it's a fun process. If you could travel in a time machine, would you go back in the past or into the future? Ooh, that's a good question, isn't it? I want to do both. I want to do both. One thing, when people ask me the time machine question, of course, I think about my books, and something like Declan's Cross, which has a strong historic aspect to it, with the ancient ruins of St. Declan, and he lived around the time of St. Patrick. So I think that would be cool to go back and see. Just, so long as I don't have to camp out, I mean, I don't mind camping out with good gear, but I don't want to, 5th century Ireland might be a little brisk. But anyway, but I also think this is just a little personal part of it. I never knew any of my grandparents. They had all died before I was born. And, my father was Dutch. So I have my Dutch grandmother and my Dutch grandfather. And then my mother is from the Florida Panhandle, this rural county, Calhoun County. And her parents had died actually when she was a teenager. So I would absolutely love to go back and meet my grandparents. And then, but going into the future, that could be fun too, wouldn't it? It's like, oh, I don't know. Do I want a crystal ball? Maybe not. Can you see yourself in any of your characters? Sometimes I guess there's little bits and pieces of me, but basically they're fictional creations because I think you can see yourself if you have, your friends, your brothers and sisters, other people. There's sometimes you can, you're in a situation, you can say, I can see myself in that. I think I would do the same thing. So it's kind of like that. Because a character like Emma Sharpe is she's actually quite a lot quite different from me in many respects. I mean, for one thing, she was a nun. I was never a nun. And she's an art expert, so that's a interest of mine. I love going to museums, and she's very unpretentious and yet has this very interesting background. So so it's almost like I wouldn't say live vicariously, but they're just the interests mirror some of mine. Last week when we were in Ireland, in fact, on Saturday, last Saturday, we were at the National Gallery of Art in Dublin, and it was just fabulous, just walking through the galleries, and we saw this wonderful painting, Meeting on the Turret Stairs, and it's only they only allow it to be viewed. I think it's 3 hours a week, and we just happened to be there on one of the hours, and it was just stunning. It's just like, oh gosh, it's just a beautiful, beautiful painting. And so, in that situation, I did think like, okay, how would Emma view this? How would Emma Sharpe view this painting? And then we have Colin Donovan, and he comes from a family of cops and lobstermen on this little fishing village on the southern Maine coast, and in I come from just a regular family. I have 6 brothers and sisters, so when we have the siblings and stuff, that makes sense to me. But if Emma and Colin walked into my office right now, I would know them. That's how I feel about it. I would recognize them. So they're not little me's coming in. They are themselves. They're their own own people, their own characters. Okay, do you have a favorite author? What kinds of books do you enjoy reading? Well, I love to read all kinds of books. To give you an example, I'm right now reading a I mean thick book, memoir of a Civil War Confederate general. Okay, so that kind of caught me by surprise, but we just had the 150th anniversary of Gettysburg, and watched the movie and got interested again, and just started, and I Googled this guy Alexander, and oh my gosh, he has his memoirs, and I ordered them, and absolutely fascinating, totally into it. So I always have a nonfiction book going, something along those lines. And then for fiction, I read across the board. I read everything. I back up. One of the things I did as a kid, climbing the tree with my pad and pen, is sit there and write, but I would also read. And I clean out the library. Read all of Mary Stewart, Agatha Christie. Uh, I started Robert Ludlum, Raymond Chandler, all of those, Alistair MacLean, another one, Helen McGinnis. And so now, just keeping up with my writer friends is a lot of fun. I've read Cold by Stella Cameron. Stella's a great friend, and she now has created this character, Alex Duggins, and it's set in the Cotswolds in England. And lo and behold, I was there 2 weeks ago, and wandering around those honey-colored, adorable villages, and so I was really happy to read Stella's book. So it's that was fun to do. I read, I have so many wonderful friends. I have Hank Philippi Ryan's new book, The Wrong Girl, just arrived in my inbox here at home, and so I'm gonna be reading that. And what's the new? And we got a new Sue Grafton too. My mother and I share the Sue Grafton books. I think it's W. We're on W now, so that's good. Let's see. To you, is a 3-star review positive or negative? Well, I guess it depends what it says. Some people, it's like you have teachers, I mean, I love 5-star reviews. Those are my favorites. And the way the whole reviewing system works, if you want to do, if you really like an author, giving them 4 or 5 stars is a very positive thing. And every author I know is so grateful for those. But that doesn't mean, you mourn a 3-star review. A lot of times it depends on what it says. I've had teachers who they consider to see a really good grade from them. One of my journalism professors was like that. And so when I got a B, I was like, yay, you celebrate. So it depends on what's said and the and I think most people are pretty fair. I certainly know that in my own reading habits, I'll love a book. I'll go to a friend or family, my mother or my sisters. I get the 3 sisters, and I'll say, "Oh, I just love this book," and I say, "I couldn't get into it." It just sometimes it's your mood. I've found authors that I just wasn't in the mood for it at the time, and then poof, got into it. So if that answers the question. What's one piece of advice you would give aspiring authors? I've actually, I used to always say just persevere, right? But I think we know that, like, if you don't write something, you're never gonna, you're never gonna sell it. Nobody's ever gonna read it. You got to write it and finish it. Okay, so that is kind of, but to me, that's like, okay, that's a given. Right now, I've been thinking about, sometimes I see so many aspiring writers get so bogged down on nitty gritty craft rules, like how many adverbs do I have in a chapter or something like that. And I would say to an aspiring writer that getting bogged down in whether you use adverbs or not, or whether you do, you read people's rules of writing, that maybe that's not what you need to think about right now. You don't need to get bogged down with that. Just lighten up on yourself a little bit. Go you read some of the, go read a Maeve Binchy, J.K. Rowling, and you see that it's what they do so well that we as readers respond to. And it's not so much of the nitty gritty of the craft. And I'm not saying that stuff's not important, but I think sometimes we get bogged down into it instead of like really digging into our characters, our story, the energy, the pacing, and all of those things. So I hope that that makes sense to you. Okay. You have won $1 million. What is the first thing that you would buy? 1 million. What can I get for 1 million? I think, it would just be fun to have. Well, where do I live? On a hilltop in Vermont. So, we go up the road like this. So someplace that we don't have all winter. So maybe a little condo in Florida. That could be fun. Ireland, condo in Ireland. I could do that with $1 million, couldn't I? I know I should put it away for my kids, shouldn't I? But I think I want that condo. What inspired you to become a writer? Oh gosh, I again grew up with 6 brothers and sisters, and it's 7 of us in 9 years, so it was like a posse. And we were out in the country, Western Massachusetts, and our house actually, we still have it. It's a little homestead, 90 acres of woods, and then it borders more woods. And then across, we're on the western edge of the Quabbin Reservoir, which has become the setting now for the Swift River Valley series that I write. So, we would go off in the woods, we'd run around, we read books, but I would go and I just love stories. And I always had a great imagination, and I would go up in that tree and write. And during the winter, I had this old, we didn't have a lot of money, right? So I had an old insulation barrel, and I'd sit on the insulation barrel and just write stories. So I always had stories, and I always had this dramatic imagination. So we'd fan out and go blueberry picking, wild blueberries, And I'd say, okay, what if I found a dead guy under the blueberry bush? It's something to do when you're bored picking blueberries. So I've just always had that kind of imagination. And I wrote several books by the time I graduated from high school. And then I went on to college. I ended up majoring in journalism, but I actually started out as a music major. But I always kept writing. And so I've always written. Do your kids read your book? If so, what do they think of them? They have read my books. They're both adults. My daughter is a history professor, and my son is a web designer. And so, we really don't talk much about that. When we're together, we're talking about I have these two little grandchildren, little 4-year-old Leo and little baby Una just turned 1. And we do that, and we hike and we kayak and we have a good time. So, um, they're very proud of what I do. They've made that clear to me, and they'll retweet and share information with their friends. So that's great. But we do things as a family. Let's see. Do you have something special that you do when you run into writer's block? Yeah, and I think of writer's block as, I used to think of it as like writer's block. Oh my gosh, that it was like a disease or something, or it was something that if you had writer's block, you never wrote again, or you had 7 years between books or something like that. And now I think of it as just like a moment where you're just not sure what you're going to write next, or you're stuck. And so I think of creativity in the process of writing as this back and forth between that concentration, that real push as you're writing. It's just all there. And then those moments where you've got to walk away from it. You've got to take a rest. And it can be something as simple as a walk. I'll go out and walk down that hill and back up again. And that can do things. And sometimes I will do something like really dramatic. A few years ago, in fact, when I was writing Saint's Gate, the first book in the Sharpe Donovan series, I went to Ireland. So talk about curing writer's block. It wasn't really writer's block, though. It was just more of a sense of just, oh God, I just needed to stir things up. And so I stayed by myself in a little cottage on the Southwest Irish coast for 3 weeks. And that really got things going. And even during those days I would go off and do these long walks. So for me, the cure for writer's block, generally speaking, is a long walk. But a break, just take a break and come back. But never, don't take a break and have it be endless. Like I'm just going to not write. You make a pact with yourself. I'm going to take the afternoon off. I'm going to take 3 days off, and then I'm going to come back and just let the back of the mind stuff do its thing. What was your favorite book as a child? I have to say that Mary Stewart, The Moon Spinners. I read that a number of times. I also read a lot of books about saints. So I guess it's natural that I have a book called Saint's Gate. But when I discovered Mary Stewart, who had been writing for some time, I mean, and I understand she's still alive, which is fabulous in her late 90s. So I just that was a moment I very much loved that book. That's I don't know, to go back to being a real little kid in the fairy tales. I love the fairy tales. Are you doing anything in observation of Banned Books Week? This is a good question because I actually, being away and on deadline and doing all this stuff, and we've had some family things, to be honest with you. My beloved father-in-law died in the middle of August, so I just kind of like I'm tuning in, going, wait, what is Banned Book Week? I actually had served for a short time on the Author Guild's committee on banned books, and I learned a lot about what goes on with all of this. But so I have not done anything special, but I certainly appreciate everyone who is, and it is something that I just believe in letting people read what they want. I had as a kid, I had a librarian, and I would go in and say, "Sure you want to read that?" "Yeah, I am." And she was just so supportive and let me read what I wanted to read. If for some reason you could no longer write, what career would interest you? Well, I started out as this musician, but yeah, I can play piano and I can play French horn, but I really I can't sing and I can't dance. So it's a good thing I can write. What career would interest me at this point? I think it would be really fun to do something like to get people interested in the outdoors and doing like their own adventures. Uh, so that interests me, like kayaking, hiking, whether it's something. It doesn't have to be extreme. I'm not an extreme hiker at all. My big hiking adventure was certainly the hardest one we've ever done was climbing Mount Washington in really nasty weather. So, but I think that would be a really cool thing. In fact, my youngest brother and I have sometimes talked about doing something because he does a lot of canoe trips and wade, backwoods Maine, so something along those lines, and I mean, I already I like good gear, and I'm not somebody who likes to rough it too much, but I think that would be fun to do. How do you react to a bad review? You know, um, it's not fun to get a bad review. I think it depends somewhat on where it's coming from, when it's coming from, and if it feels like it's just like if it's every now and then, and this is very rare for me, but I know other writers who've done where it just feels personal. It feels like if there's somebody's like attributing motives to you, like it's like somebody will say, oh, well, she just and I really haven't gotten this, but like I know a friend who has somebody said that she just wrote it for the money or she dashed it off or something. Those kinds of things. That I think is not, it's not fun, but it's just this just life, and I actually try to avoid reading a lot of stuff that and just it does come across your desk. Sometimes you can't help it. There was a very funny piece a number of years ago. I can't, gosh, I'm trying to remember who it was by. I think it might have been John Gregory Dunn, who said he was going to avoid all reviews of his book, and so he did all these things. And there was no internet when this came out, and so he and I hope somebody has the article and can send it to me because it was so funny, and because it turned out his mother told him. So you are so even trying to avoid, like, okay, I'm not going to. But if anybody's actually trying to make an author have a bad day because of a bad review, I mean, I think that most of us understand that sometimes you just don't like a book. And I have a friend, a writer friend, who says that's why there's chocolate and vanilla. Any other books in the works, goals for future projects? I'm actually working on Harbour Island now, and that's the fourth book in the Sharpe Donovan series. And if you've read Declan's Cross, you know that there's some things at the end that you're gonna want to see figured out in picked up on in Harbour Island. And so I'm working on that. I always have so many ideas, so sometimes it's like, okay, which is the next one, and then getting myself committed to that. Um, but I like to let just one of the things I do in writing as much as I do is stories start percolating as I'm writing um, one book. And so while I'm writing Harbour Island, I am thinking about what's next in the Swift River Valley series. And then I have some other ideas that I mean, they may go nowhere. I don't worry about that. I really focus on the book that's in my head and what I'm doing now, and then these things that percolate. So so we'll see what happens. I just keep writing. Let's see. How would you describe your writing genre? Would you want to try a different type? I mean, it's called romantic suspense. But I can remember when I first started. Remember the blueberry bush and the dead guy. Well, I actually wrote a book with a blueberry bush and a dead guy, and I had no idea it was called romantic suspense. So I found out, and so I wrote my letter to the agent and I said, write romantic suspense, and she wrote back and said, well, romantic suspense isn't selling. I'm going, oh crap, I wish I called it something else. But anyway, so when I'm thinking of a story, I think of the story. In fact, Mary Stewart was asked what genre she writes, and she has said that she considers herself a storyteller. So that's how I think of myself. I try not to get really bogged down in specific genre definitions. So I'll have, for instance, I've had readers already. I mean, Declan's Cross is just kind of out, and I've had readers already write to me and say, they think of it as a suspense novel, and then some have written to me and say, that they think of it as, they love that. There's kind of three relationships going on in the story: Emma and Colin, and then Julianne Maroney and Colin's brother Andy, and they had just broken up. And Julianne goes to Ireland for marine biology, and to this new friend who then disappears, and that's how Emma and Colin end up involved in the suspense story. And then we have this Irish detective, Sean Murphy, and his old flame Kitty, who runs the hotel where we had an art theft, unsolved art theft from 10 years ago, and how does that fit in with the missing diver marine biology enthusiast? So you put all that together, and it's romantic. There's relationships. I mean, to me, it's just, the suspense, the missing person, but it's about the characters, it's the story, it's the plot. All of these things come together. So, but in my Swift River series, we don't have there's this real more contemporary romance slash women's fiction. There's a puzzle, there's a mystery, and um, Cider Brook that I just finished. We got pirates and pirate treasure, and there's a little mystery around that. But there's no blood and guts. There's no dead bodies. It's not that kind of book. Where do your ideas come from? I have a friend who has an idea drawer in her desk. I said, "Oh, I'd like to get in that." But ideas just come to me. If I didn't have ideas, I I wouldn't be a writer. I didn't set out to be a writer. Like I want to be a writer. I want to stay at home and type. Or I it seems like a good job, or anything like that. I started writing because I had ideas. So when I climbed up in that tree, I had ideas. When I and that's what. So where they come from, sometimes I can trace a book idea right back to its source. It's like it's like the arson investigator, and there's a cigarette butt. Got it. That's where the fire started, and I can do that with some books. Now with Declan's Cross, I knew I had the given of the main characters because this is a continuing couple, and then I knew they were in Ireland, so I started with that, but I didn't know what kind of trouble they got into. But when I was walking in Ardmore, for those of you who've been there, and that you have that cliff walk that goes around that headland, and then the round tower, this 12th century round tower rising up, and we were standing in the little ruin of the cottage where our son-in-law's great grandfather was born. And it just, okay, I got ideas. And I ended up writing a book called The Angel, which is the second book in this FBI Boston Police Department series. It's The Widow, The Angel, The Mist, and The Whisper. So I hope that helps. Okay. What are your favorite points of interest in Ireland? Oh, well, all of Ireland is I find fascinating. For me, the it's walking in the Irish Hills. It's just going and walking the ground. There's a walk. Maybe some of you have done this. The Killarney, which many of us have heard of, as a touristy area, but for a reason, because it's incredibly beautiful. You have the lakes of Killarney, and you have the ancient castle, and then this Muckross house, the English landlords. And there's a walk, the Old Kenmare Road, and it goes from Killarney into the village of Kenmare. And as you walk along that road, you're walking the ground. I mean, that people have walked on for many, many, many years. And you can go past the famine ruins, and you just get a feel when you look at that for the lives of these the people who suffered so terribly during that difficult time. So that for me, the history combined with it's just an incredibly stunningly beautiful area. As you walk along, it's kind of these and you can read a description of this Father Bracken, this Irish priest who appears in the Sharpe Donovan series, makes this walk. This is one of his favorite walks, and he's had a difficult past. He lost his wife and two small daughters, and he's a whiskey expert. He does he and his twin brother own a whiskey distillery, and so he makes this walk, and it's just really beautiful. You can see the bay in the distance. You can see the mountains, the ridges, and so I love to do that. And then I just mentioned whiskey. And Ireland, of course, is known for the water of life, as we say, the for its whiskey industry, and it's just fascinating to learn about. It's totally fascinating. So, and I've been very, very fortunate to have a wonderful friend in Ireland who is a whiskey expert and helps me out. So, but any mistakes I make with whiskey are mine because he does know his business. Do any of your friends find themselves hidden in your books? No, actually, that I would say no. At least not nobody's told me that, and they certainly aren't. Certainly aren't there. What is more likely to be there with friends is just the help so many people have provided with their expertise. For instance, I just mentioned the whiskey, but would be law enforcement. So I have a cousin who's a detective out in California, and he has been very gracious with his help. I'll ask, can I do this? He goes, hey, you're getting off into fiction land, Carla. Yeah, real life. Yeah. So I said, okay. And then I have a friend who's a judge who has been an enormous help. Every now and then you do need a warrant, and so stuff like that, and their generosity has been very, very helpful. So it's more with research. Carly, you mentioned Father Bracken. Oh, hi, Debbie. Was he fashioned after anyone in particular? He's such an enigmatic figure, sad yet so full of life. He is a character who really, truly just came to me, and I am fascinated by him. I'm learning more about him as I write about him. He is the main character in Rock Point, which is an e-novella prequel to the Sharpe and Donovan series, and he resonates with me. I'm very delighted that he resonates with so many readers. I hear a lot. And what is his future? He's this widower who became a priest, and now he's left his country and his family to serve for a year in this struggling fishing village. And he's kind of this a friend to to Colin, who lives this hard life as a coming off of this very difficult undercover mission. And so, what's next for Father Bracken? You know, it's going to be an interesting thing to see how he develops and what happens with him. I certainly, you know, I grew up with some Irish priests, but I wouldn't say any of them is Father Bracken. He just, to me, again, if he walked into this room, I would know him. So I hope that answered the question about Mr. Bracken. Oh, question: night owl or early bird? Early bird. That's one reason. So many people, they say, have more trouble flying east than flying west. Well, I actually fly east pretty easily because I'm such an early bird. So, you know, my agent and I laugh because she's the night owl, total night owl. So, you know, she'll email me and I'm just getting up. She's just going to bed and I'm just getting up. So definitely an early bird. And it's fun being in Ireland because a lot of stuff is much later than I do. So, you know, we were just there and the place we stayed had breakfast started at 8 o'clock. So I'm like, 8 o'clock? I'm ready for lunch. So, but be a little bit on Vermont time still helps. So, but I do sometimes think I might start sleeping in a little bit later. But when I say early, I'm usually up between 5 and 6. What's the best advice anyone has ever given you? It boils down to this: pay attention to the quality of your life and the quality of your work, and everything else will fall into place. So that's it's not always easy to do, but it allows you. For me, it allows me to think about what's important here and what I can do versus what other people can do, and trying to control things that I can't control. So the quality of my life, the quality of my work. That was just so succinct and really the best advice given to me. And I'm waiting for another question. Well, let's see what I do. Okay. Oh, here's one. Okay. This is our 5-minute warning, so get your question in now. Okay, and I'll be announcing the 5 lucky winners. All right. Please tell us in one sentence only why you would read the book Rock Point. Oh, and Rock Point, is that really sad story? I don't know if I already. No, Rock Point's not sad at all. There is certainly a sad part to it, but it starts. It's Phineas Bracken is on his way to Maine. He knows he's going to be going for a year, and so we get a little bit of insight into him and who he is. But he's a survivor. He's a very plucky character, and he gets involved with smugglers, with smugglers. So, and as far as the one sentence on why to read my book, I just, because it's fun. I hope it's a fun read for you. So, how old were you when you were first published? I was in my 20s. Yeah, I'd have to like think back to exactly how old, because the first book I wrote that sold, I was 23. Because I remember it was just a fun story. So something that sticks in my mind, of course. So yeah, I've been lucky enough to be published for a while now because I'm not 23 anymore. Oh, it was tell us in one sentence why we should read your book. Oh, all right. Hmm. Um, well, Declan's Cross, I think it's an entree into a really entertaining series with romance and suspense and a great setting in Ireland, and I think you would enjoy it. So that's an interesting question. I'm going to have to think about that some more, come up with a really good answer. Thank you. What is one book everyone should read? I think I would answer that kind of a book. I don't have a particular book, but I assume you mean in a general sense as opposed to like one of my books that you should read. But in a general sense, to me, it's like the one book you should read is the one book you think you should read that you haven't read. And I think there's probably a lot of us who have one of those books. It's just like keep thinking, I really should read boom, you know, Charles Dickens or the Bible or whatever it is for you that you just haven't done and you think you should, and it's just kind of there. But other than that, no, I don't have anything. I think that's so individual. Okay. Oh, I get to announce the lucky winners. They are Catherine Ivan, Rita Acuna, Irene Menge, Amy Farland, and Connie. And if I mispronounce any of your names, my apologies. But congratulations and thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. This was really a lot of fun. All right, great. Awesome.